And we're back on Shardlight Radio. And today I want to talk about the recently liberated from jail Ergon, the Tragic Gargoyle. In this episode, I'd like to maybe compare Ergon to the other available champions and maybe have the unpopular opinion that maybe the game's not ready for Ergon. So to begin, Ergon the Tragic Gargoyle has an exhaust ability that sends the top 2 cards of your deck to your discard zone. While for some decks this may be a drawback of some kind, for Ergon it absolutely is not. This is a power move for this champion and should not be looked at as any kind of a draw. It essentially opens up his ability to draw 3 cards a turn in a sense, because Ergon's second power is exhaust, pay 1, put target unit from your discard zone on top of your deck. I want to compare Ergon to some of the other champions. First of all, he has 2 powers. Many of the other champions do not have 2 powers. So without even digging into the nuts and bolts of what he is trying to do, he is already in a position where he has more interactivity that he's bringing to the table than other champions. His exhaust, discard, send 2 cards from your deck to the discard zone power is functionally free. Yes, it requires Ergon to exhaust, so it prevents you from using both his powers in one turn, but it could easily just say, use this once per turn, and it would be exactly a free power. So you compare that to another main character that has a free ability, like Ariana. Ariana puts 1 legitimately bad card and 1 card that the amulet's probably also bad, but I kind of like what it's doing, so I don't want to say it's bad. But Ariana gives you 2 extra cards in your hand at the start of the game and then does nothing for the rest of the game. Ergon lets you look at 2 extra cards. Admittedly, they don't go straight to your hand, but you're looking at 2 extra cards every single turn, and there is no drawback to that. Yes, if you deck out, you will lose the game, but as an Ergon player, you have a 1 mana out to ever decking out. So again, it's not a drawback. He just has more interactivity than any other champion. So let's look at another champion that has 2 powers. Liam. When you destroy an opponent's tower, you can add 1 gear from your deck to your hand. Now that's pure upside. You have to do some stuff to earn it, but it's not a drawback. Then once per turn, you can discard a gear and give target unit plus 500. Liam, if you can satisfy his requirement, will add stuff to your hand and then let you do additional stuff with the stuff in your hand. This cannot happen infinitely though. You will run out of towers to destroy, which probably means you would win, but the point is you would run out of towers to destroy and run out of a hand to discard if you tried to use Liam's power in a similar fashion to the way someone would want to use Ergon's power. A card like Jamail or Hoenna, they kind of fit into the same category where you do a thing and you get a counter, and once you get enough counters, then you get a little bit of an upside. So you have to work your way towards it. So while Jamail and Hoenna don't have distinct downsides of any kind, they do ask you to do something. There are differences in what they're asking and the number of times you can satisfy Jamail's requirement, but both of their requirements are limited in kind of a similar way. You will run out of units to recruit for Jamail, and you will run out of units and towers to kill for Hoenna. So there's sort of a cap on how much total value you can extract from these champions. Another category of champion where I would put Dragonholt, Iton, Orin, and Rain are champions that have definite upside, but in order to get to their upside, you have to draw other things out of your deck. In a vacuum, these cards do essentially nothing. You have to be able to satisfy their requirement, and the requirements are fairly narrow, where Hoenna wants you to destroy an enemy unit, or Liam wants you to destroy an opponent's tower. These are things that are basically guaranteed to be in the game. If your opponent has no units for Hoenna to destroy, you're probably winning anyway. Whereas Iton, you've got to get your units in play. And it just feels like being able to know that an opponent's tower is on the field no matter what happens versus drawing a fire unit or drawing a knight or gear. There's a fail rate on these champions even being able to do anything. Then you look at what the upside does, and somebody like Rain, yes, he's got more cards that came out in set 2, but the upside is small, and the requirement, while not huge, is still a requirement. But if you look at a character like Jillian, her ability goes off regardless. Now, it's varying degrees of good based on your hand, so maybe she could be lumped into the category with Auron or Dragonholt, where the way you build your deck has a lot to say with about how good this main character is. And similar to Ergon, Jillian is just pure upside. Now, I get revealing information is valuable. It does matter, so you can't really say that her power is entirely free, but it costed in sort of an intangible way. Out of all these champions, they all ask you to do something in order to extract the value from them, with the exception of Ergon. He can just burn a couple cards and he can pull something good out of your KO pile and put it on top of your deck at any time. With the additional tools that showed up in set 2, yes, we got stuff like Bone Scavenger, which can target units in the KO pile, but on color, Ergon has Ghastly Demise, has Golem of Allurement. There are a bunch of answers to a card that may have been something that could target Ergon, as well as kind of the more like the sigil of whatever it is that lets you remove stuff from a KO pile. It just feels like even now that there's more KO pile interaction and the ability to not let Ergon run away with the game quite so emphatically, the removal of Sylphia matters a lot. His ability to recycle Sylphia with Kite while also digging through the whole deck to look for those things in a more efficient way than any other champion had a lot to do with his early dominance and his suspension. All that said, I'm not totally convinced that Ergon isn't still too powerful, given how every other champion needs you to perform an action in game or draw the right card. Yes, Ariana, you get her stuff completely for free, but the stuff you're getting is of small value compared to maybe the next worst champion deals 500 damage. Well, up to 1,000 damage. That's probably better than Kala, the trusty Koala. The meta's still young. There's still a lot of combinations to look through, but I think Ergon is extremely well positioned to be a very dominant champion. Now, I do think more aggressive strategies potentially have the ability to overrun his kind of control game, but in the control game, his ability to go essentially infinite and never deck out just trumps what every other champion is able to do. So is the game ready for Ergon to come back? Well, we'll find out. But I'm thinking that when champions like Rain, the Mournful Commander, exist, somebody like Ergon is maybe just a little too pushed, especially considering how young the game is and how we want to see every champion have at least some shot at actually being playable. Ergon, to me, seems to shut the door on a lot of things. Again, more testing to be done. I'm not calling for a ban, but I'm saying this early into the meta, it still seems like Ergon is maybe just the best choice. All right, until next time, go win some games.